Is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at WrestlingWithJohners.com. Hello and welcome to the latest live episode of Wrestling with Johners, episode 347. Got a very special guest to speak to on this Thursday evening. It's getting quite late into the hours where he is. I've got none other than wrestling legend, pro wrestling legend, and the founder and owner of Slam Wrestling in Finland, Michael STARBUCK Majalahti. Did I pronounce that right, Michael? How are you doing?
Yeah, you got me right. So it's when I was in school back in Ontario and also throughout Canada. So I lived for 23 years in North America. I was born in Timmins, Ontario, same place as Shania Twain. And the guys, all my friends used to call me Majalahti. So it almost sounds like it's Italian in a way. But Majalahti, yeah, that's
like
right.
That, exactly. Thank you so much. But I didn't get it too bad after all. But we are live across YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and X. And if you're watching us live, you want to get in touch with the show. If you're a fan of STARBUCK or if you're a fan of Slam Wrestling Finland, get in touch with the show. Send your questions through to us live on air. We do our very best to answer all of your questions. Obviously, they've already started filtering in as we speak. So please get in touch. We want to hear your questions, and Michael will do his best to answer them during the course of this live broadcast. But before we take a deep dive, just a quick reminder of some of my recent guests. Certainly, February has been a stacked month already. We had Jay Joshua join me just last Thursday, as a matter of fact. So just a week ago, 7 days ago. Please go and check that one out. Give it a like, give it a comment and a share. And just a few days ago, this past Monday, Scotty Rourke, the current BWR World Heavyweight Champion, was joined me live on the show. And Sunday was a big day for Wrestling with Johners. I had good old friend of mine, Heidi, Katrina, hadn't been on the show for 2.5 years, rejoined me just 24 hours after her fantastic historic win as the brand new and the first ever Slam Women's Champion over in Finland. We'll talk about all of that, but go and check out that interview. It was a great fun. I think about 10 or 11 minutes we spoke there. Good catch up with Heidi. Next week, we've got Alexis Falcon joining me on the 20th, Tuesday, the 20th of February. Another fantastic interview live on Wrestling with Johners, 8 p.m. UK time. And then the first interview of March has already been announced with Eddie Dennis. A fantastic UK pro from South Wales will be joining me live on Wrestling with Johners Monday, the 4th of March today. It's all about this guy here. And Michael, I've got to be honest with you, all the reports that I've heard and seen about SUPERSLAM from this past Saturday just looked absolutely tremendous, my friend. You 5 days removed from that awesome show. Well, your head must be still kind of buzzing. Where's your emotions at 5 days from the show? You must be still pretty hyped about what happened.
Well, to be honest, the thing is that I've been doing this now actively for 30 years plus. But I got into the wrestling business in 1992. I was originally a ring announcer and a TV commentator, because I've always had a good voice. And actually, that's one of the ways that I make my money, is that I parlay my voice for voiceovers in B2B, B2C, and export here in Finland. And I'm one of the top voiceover artists in the country. So with that in mind, it's when I got into the wrestling business, you always wonder to yourself, how far can you go? Everybody should have a dream. Everybody should have some goal, some aspiration as to where you want to be, what you want to achieve. Because you only have one run at this. You really do. It's much like life. You don't have extra players. This is not a video game where you have extra players and you could just, have a new shot, like 9 Lives of a Cat. It doesn't work that way. So that's where, for me, to finally hear, after 20 plus years of pioneering wrestling only in the country of Finland, 30 plus years in the business, 32 years now entirely in the business, but actively 30. To be on Fight, to be one of the 3 companies, to my knowledge, we are the 3rd European promotion on Fight right now. That in and of itself should say something. Now, on top of that, in this day and age, for us to be on Fight and to produce what I deem to be the alternative to indie-rific. Now, let me just explain that really quickly, because nowadays it seems that everybody wants to be AEW light. Everybody's doing the Canadian Destroyers. They're doing all the Tope Con Hilos, the top rope Poison Ranas, this, that, and the other. And it's just a copy of the next guy. It's monkey see, monkey do. And nobody's going out on a limb and doing something which would be, how could I say, traditional in nature, because I think there's a large demographic out there. And I speak to them on and off all the time. And I run into these people where they say that, oh, that wrestling, how it used to be back in the day, you know, the Eddie Guerrero, the Chris Benoit, the Macho Man, Randy Savage, you know, that's what they call back to. That's what their fond memories are of. And for me, I was brought up in the wrestling business with an old school mentality. So I don't do indie-rific, and I don't produce indie-rific. What I produce is wrestling the way that you remember it. And I believe there's a really strong market for that, because that is the one niche in our business, in our industry, that's missing on the global map by and large today. That's the niche that's missing. And that's the niche that people fondly remember. And that's where we're able to now produce that, because that's my calling card. That's what I teach my students in 8 countries to date. For the past 20 plus years, I've been teaching old school fundamental professional wrestling. And that's what we produce with SUPERSLAM and with Slam Wrestling Finland. So to get on Fight, to answer your question now, I went around my wrist to get to my elbow. But nonetheless, to answer your question, to be on Fight now and to produce traditionally flavored professional wrestling the way that you remember it is a feat in and of itself. For that, I am stoked. For that, I am proud. I'm a proud papa. And it's like the buzz that we've gotten now from SUPERSLAM has been tremendous. And I believe in large part, it's due to the fact that we are a callback. We're a throwback to the way that wrestling used to be. That's why I'm really excited about the future and what the future holds.
Absolutely. And you mentioned about Fight. I think it's more readily known as Thriller TV Plus nowadays, if I'm not mistaken. A recent change by Fight TV. I think I'll always call it Fight TV. That's what I've known it for many years. Same for yourself. But you was in a different venue this time, weren't you, Michael? And I think a new venue for Slam. Was it the Black Box 360? Tell us about that and your choice of venue and what it added to the show on Saturday.
Well, I'll tell you this. By and large, when it comes to production values, I mean, there's always something to improve. And we had one of our production people drop out the day of the show, which complicated things, because then our director had to do 5 things at once. So, you know, of course, you're going to suffer some setbacks during, you know, the live production of said show. But with that in mind, Black Box 360, there are only a handful of venues that can answer to the production standards and the production values that this Black Box 360 offers in Helsinki. Now, be it noted that this is also at I believe it's the largest shopping mall in the Nordics of Europe. It's called Mall of Tripla on the 5th floor. And I happen to know the guy that runs the place. And I would say he's, in some way, I would call him a friend. Not just an acquaintance, but a friend. And due to the fact that in life, it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. The wrestling business is largely the same. It's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And because I've been a stalwart, I've made my name in Finland as the wrestler. I am the wrestler. When people speak of professional wrestling, I am the one name, Michael Majalahti, the Rebel Starbuck, that comes up synonymous with our industry in this country. And because of that, because I've stayed the course and because I've stemmed the tide, I've been able to, how could you say, I've been able to ingrain myself in the minds of many. And there is a certain amount of goodwill and sympathy towards me personally by specific people. And that's why they will open doors for you. Black Box is a very expensive venue to run. It is, if we were to really, you know, go the the full route of paying what other companies would have to pay to be there. That'd be a very expensive place to run. So by the grace of God, we were able to go there and to produce one of the best shows that we've ever run. And with that, we're always looking for new places to hold live events. Helsinki is a tough market. Helsinki and the capital region of Finland, first of all, after COVID, all of the venues, the pricing went through the roof. They all got, first of all, for about 2 years, they were empty, right? Because of COVID, because all the restrictions and whatnot. Then they got greedy. As soon as the market came back, they were like, we want our money and we want it now, and we're going to double the price or triple the price, whatever have you. This is what we're charging, take it or leave it. Whereas back in the day, there would be some flexibility. You could negotiate. Now there is no negotiation anymore, by and large. And then with that said, most of these venues that there are in the city of Helsinki have priced themselves out of the market as far as what is able to be done by ticket sales at the door, because that's how we make our money, by and large, is at the door, at the gate. So therefore, unless we have co-ops that pump money into the production, that pump money into our business, all of the money that we make will be made at the gate. So therefore, yeah, it's a tough card. It's a tough card.
Indeed. And we spoke about you streaming on Fight TV, which is a historic, momentous occasion for Slam. But one other historic, momentous occasion that happened on Saturday night was this match here, wasn't it? And I know that you've had female matches by and large throughout the history of Slam Wrestling Finland, but this one was special. Lexa Valo versus Heidi Katrina for the inaugural Slam Women's Championship. And it was a tremendous match. Now, I had the honor, the privilege of speaking to Heidi Katrina just 24 hours after her win. As I mentioned earlier, the interview is up on my YouTube channel. Please go and check that out. But at the end of the match, when all said and done, a brand new and a first ever Slam Wrestling Finland Women's Champion was crowned. And that is the Golden Amazon, Heidi Katrina. Now, you got a smile on your face there, Michael. I can see that you're very, very proud, not just of the day, not just of the event, but of the occasion and crowning your first ever women's champion. And what better, women's champion you could have asked for than Heidi Katrina?
Well, I absolutely agree with you. There's one thing that I have to say, and it's not in defense of Heidi. It's as a proponent of Heidi. I'm not only Heidi's promoter here in Finland, but I'm also a friend. And there's one thing that I value in Heidi Katrina above all. And most of the wrestlers nowadays should take notes of what I'm going to say next. Everybody's looking for bookings. Everybody wants a gig. There's only X amount of spots to be had. Now, there are companies where you can go that'll elevate your game. It'll make you look better. Simply the production, the agenting, the overall presentation of said product you will look better. You will come out of that looking better than you would at any said random event elsewhere. There are bookings that make you better and you make your career better. And then there are bookings which are all the same. With that said, I believe that Heidi is one of the people where if she gets a booking, she will hustle more for that one booking than any other piece of talent that I've ever come across. Heidi is the perfect example of a hustler. She is somebody that will go out and she will exponentially do more with that one booking to put that name out there, to hashtag you, to hyperlink you, to put your company in the forefront. She will do more than any other piece of talent that I've ever come across. And this is something that a lot of girls in this business should be paying attention to, because the thing is that right now, women's wrestling is a hot ticket. But there's a lot of ladies out there in our industry who won't share your socials, and they'll maybe post once or twice and just put a couple of things out, and that's it, and they just leave it out there. Otherwise, they'll use their social media and say, no, I don't post stuff on my social media. I don't. That's, I have these certain things. I have to keep up my quotas and whatever else and this, that, the other algorithms. Listen, as a promoter, I don't care. I'm booking you. I'm putting money into you. I'm bringing you in. It's an investment. You got to make back that investment for me. So I don't care about your socials being this, that, or the other. Either you want the booking or you don't. Now, Heidi, like I said, is the perfect example of somebody who's going to do more for that one booking than any other piece of talent, male or female, period.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we use Heidi Katrina. There's a reason, and I just gave it to you. With that said, I think that Heidi is one of the most dependable people that I've ever used. I believe that she's hungry. She's ambitious. A lot of wrestling has to do with, and life in general has to do with what I call the Bill Watts philosophy. I'm a big fan of Bill Watts. I used to be in contact with Bill Watts about 15 years ago, on and off. And my favorite promoter of all time, Mid-South UWF, Bill Watts. Now, Bill said that I'm a big believer in that you either fit on my team or you don't. Now, think about that. As a promoter, it's not my job to accommodate you. It's your job to fit on my team. It's your job to see that if you fit into what we do, and if the chemistry is right, because there's a lot of people where it's nobody's fault, but the chemistry is off. There's people that you run into in life, and it's just like they just rub you the wrong way, and it's like, no, I don't like this person. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's like, for me personally, it's like we live in a day and age of woke culture. Personally, I can't stand it. I'm an old school guy. I run my business like the business used to be run back in the day, and I handle myself personally like a man should handle himself. So I believe in a hierarchy, and I believe that there's a boss, and I believe that there has to be a structure, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the one great thing about Heidi is that we don't have to worry about any drama which comes with the woke crowd, because she's not like that. There's reasons why we use certain talents. And this, once again, is in favor of and as a proponent of Heidi Katrina. I think Heidi is one of the best talents that we've ever had in Finland. And I think that she has got a look. She has got marketability. I believe that she has fire intensity. I believe that she has like absolute magnetism. When you put her out in front of a crowd for PR purposes, she just automatically gravitates. Those people come to her. She's like a magnet. She just draws people towards her. Her demeanor, the way she speaks, she's always got time for everybody. She's always smiling. She is the perfect addition to anybody's roster.
Absolutely.
So anybody's listening out there it is.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, what do you think she's going to do for the popularity of not just wrestling, but female wrestling in the country of Finland? And obviously, you're trying to reach out to a wider fan base, a wider audience. And I suppose, a large opportunity there, Michael, is the female audience. Not only getting them in as fans, but possibly getting them interested in the sport themselves. Now you've crowned your first ever women's champion in Heidi Katrina. There's a great opportunity now to widen your reach both in the fan base and the popularity of women's wrestling altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you completely. Because like with anything in life, somebody has to be the forerunner, and somebody has to be the standard bearer. Somebody has to set. I believe in ideals, and as far as like I would say icons and ideals, because if you look back, let's say even with old Greek culture or Roman culture, you look at all the statues, you look at fables, and you look at folklore from different nationalities and nations and countries and peoples, there's always the same types of things that they resonate throughout all cultures. And one of them is, for example, the prototype of the hero. I believe that everybody, like, you'll never see a great, somebody like Zeus or somebody like Achilles or whatever, who's not going to be fit, who's not going to be athletic, who's not going to be heroic, who's not going to be brave. All of these things they transcend nationalities and borders. They're attributes that I believe everybody aspires to. So when you put somebody with these attributes onto the forefront and you make them a forerunner, then yes, I do believe that's going to be something that people want to aspire to. because that's really, if you look at WWE, you look at Roman Reigns, you look at their business, you look at Charlotte Flair, it's the same thing, professionally done and professionally presented. When it's not a question of nepotism or whatever have you, the same rules apply. So that's where, yes, you're right. I believe that Heidi is somebody who will naturally draw attention, not just with the media, but with a possible new fan base, with females, with ladies that maybe they'll get the spark. Yeah, I do agree with you. Yes.
Absolutely. And let's not forget her opponent on Saturday, Lexa Vallow, who was a formidable opponent. And I know that she's performed for Slam many times, an experienced pro around the European circuit, and a Finland native as well, I understand. But she put out a hell of a performance on Saturday, and definitely somebody to watch. And up there, as good as the rest of the locker room in Slam Finland.
Yeah, Lexa is a hungry competitor. She is. I consider her to be the daughter of the Vikings. We call her the Queen of Sisu. Sisu is an attribute of Finnish character, which means that it's like grit, fortitude. It is never say die. It is this Finnish hard-headedness that we have as a nation, as a peoples. We have a saying which translates loosely into English, if I can picture it for you, that as if going through a gray stone. In other words, that you're passing through a hard rock.
Yeah.
That you're not breaking, you're passing through it. And with that in mind, I think that's that sisu, that Finnish never say die grit, is what Lexa possesses. And if we think of the two counterparts, we think of Heidi Katrina, the Golden Amazon, with the way that she looks like, she's a movie star. And you have the iconoclast of Viking culture in a Gothic sense, a bit melancholic. You have an incredible dynamic between these two competitors. And a lot of that feeds into the imagery of professional wrestling too, because a lot of what we do, of course, it is a visual game, not just a visual game, but it's a visual stimulus. Professional wrestling has to leave you feeling like you saw something larger than life.
Yeah.
When I was wrestling in Japan, I was the top gaijin for Yoshihiro Tajiri's promotions, WNC Wrestling New Classic, and for Smash. So I was his champion twice, and I was his most utilized foreign wrestler. So I remember one time it was a trip that we had, a road trip between Osaka and Tokyo, and there was a bus stop in between where the bus pulled over and where all the wrestlers on the bus. I believe it was Muga World's bus, which is Tatsumi Fujinami's company. That we're using his bus back in the day. But Tajiri took me aside and said, "Starbuck, when a hardworking person in Tokyo, Japanese person, spends their hard-earned yen once, maybe twice a week on entertainment, they don't want to see people like themselves. They don't want to see another Joe Schmo, another schmuck that looks like them doing something. They want to see King Kong versus Godzilla." In his words, these were his words. And I agree that even though we've come to the day and age of, how could you say, inclusivity, I guess would be the word, our culture, all inclusive, everybody can do everything. Doesn't matter what your skill level or your talent is, you can do it. That's what they believe, at least. But I think the thing that started this was grunge rock back in the 1990s, because you had people that did away with the Kiss look or the Motley Crue look, and they just dressed in flannel shirts, jeans, and a pair of sneakers, cut their hair short, and they were rock stars in Soundgarden or Nirvana. And it destroyed the basis of what you would consider to be a rock star, larger than life, this, that, and the other. But I do believe that at the end of the day, even though our society touts a lot of inclusivity and they make it out to be a bigger thing than it is, because I don't believe that people in general want to pay good money to see another person just like them. At the end of the day, I don't believe that.
No,
I believe that at the end of the day, people want to see something special. And if you think about the typecasting, if we can use that word, I don't like the word, but I can't figure out another synonym for it right now. But if you take that, the presentation of what you would deem to be marketable, and to put it out there to have people pay good money, not just money, but good money, to see something which would be larger than life, you have to give them more meat on the bone, on the proverbial bone.
Yeah.
And that's where, if you think about the gimmicks, or you think about the look, or you think about the presentation, or you think about the skill set, you think about the entire ball of wax. The wrestlers that we use, by and large, at least at the top of the card, have got to have that extra something that people will want to pay for, which is going to be larger than life.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about the wrestling scene over in Finland. It's not a scene that I'm terribly familiar with, and possibly the same for a lot of my audience. But I know that you've been a stalwart, you've been a figurehead, you've been a face of the wrestling scene over in Finland for over 20 years now. Is it a growing scene? I know that Slam is possibly one of, if not the biggest promotion out there, and I can't imagine there's too many of those. But tell us a bit about the scene as a whole, and is the fan base growing? More importantly,
well, wrestling in Finland now is gaining more steam because of the fact that linear television is going the way of the dinosaur, and because the fact that linear television is now, and TV shows are dropping in numbers, all of these different content providers, whether you platforms, whatever have you, the Via Plays, the TV stations, the this, that, the other, are looking for content. And whatever content can catch somebody's eye, they're almost willing to take a chance on it. So with that in mind, it's a better time now for pro wrestling than it was in the past, in some way, not in all ways, because the thing is that in Finland, they have a term for pro wrestling that they use in the Finnish language, which is called showpaini, which means show wrestling. They don't understand the concept of pro wrestling. They've given it their own little twist. The media has given it their own little twist, largely due to the WWE product, which has been on TV here since the late 1980s. So Sky Channel had it originally. Then it was Eurosport. I was actually a commentator for WWE on Eurosport for 6 years. Between 2009 and 2015, I was the face of WWE as far as the commentary goes, domestically here in Finland on Eurosport. So with all that said, there are TV stations that have featured wrestling. New Japan's been here, at least on the Eurosport channel, late 1990s. And WCW was also shown in Finland for a brief period of time. So, people do know about wrestling, but because of the fact that the large TV stations have never taken a risk with pro wrestling, they've never, the way that Finland works television wise is this, and it might have changed in the past few years, but at least 10 years ago still, this is the way it was. Any show that the initial airing, the initial episode of which would not draw 1 million viewers, because we're a nation of 5.5 million about. So if it didn't draw over 1 million viewers, the main channels, the head channel, would not touch it. That's why they would only take Dancing with the Stars. They would only take Survivor. They would only take Americanized formats that they could just say, give their own little Finnish twist to. And then they would use their smaller subsidiary channels to feature like SmackDown per se. So even with that, the market for pro wrestling in Finland is the mirror that we have is WWE. Nobody here really knows about AEW. Nobody here, largely except outside of a very small, minute, hardcore fan base, knows about New Japan, NWA, or anything else. It's WWE. They know about The Undertaker. They know about John Cena. They know about Triple H. They know about Roman Reigns, maybe. That's it. That's it. So that is our relevant mirror that we have to deal with, and we have to parlay our products, you know, and kind of bounce it off that in some way, shape, or form, and presentation, vibe, something has to be familiar that you can almost draw a comparison in some way, shape, or form. So that's where the Finnish media has been very tough to break for professional wrestling as far as getting steady mainstream exposure in Finland. And also because the Finnish media and Finnish people in general look at wrestling, professional wrestling, as a bastard. That means that in Finland, people look at sports as a holy thing. It's a pious, it's a noble thing. It's legit, right down the middle, whatever else, this, that, and the other. Wrestling is an anomaly. Wrestling is an island unto itself. So I think that many medias and many people in Finland, they disregard wrestling because they can't purely put it into the entertainment category, and they can't purely put it into the sports category. To draw a better comparison for you, or a linear comparison, in 2019, WWE came to Finland. Live Nation brought them over, and at that time, they hired me as their foreign, or I would say domestic, in this case, domestic liaison. I was the liaison slash, how would you say, it's the almost like the chancellor, if you were, of professional wrestling for the WWE product in Finland under their auspices, blessed by both, given the blessing by both WWE and by Live Nation. Yeah. So during that time, WWE's head offices out of England called me up, out of the blue. They called me up. They said, "You're the man in the Nordics, so we just thought to ask you a question. We've been trying to crack the Scandinavian nut, the Nordic nut, for a long time now, and we can't figure it out." They said that, "What would you say? What would have to be done? How would we go about breaking into the Nordic market?" They asked me. They came to Finland. They had their meetings with the TV stations here, whatever else, and they were able to get back on Finnish TV for about a 2-year period. I think they're off now. I'm not sure that they're still on anymore. But they had an edited down version of Raw and of SmackDown on Finnish television in the middle of the night, basically at about 12:30 in the morning on a Saturday, Sunday. So I told them at that time, I believe the reason why WWE has a hard time cracking the Nordic nut is because you haven't defined yet exactly what WWE is. Are you sport? Are you entertainment? Are you sports entertainment? And this is the question. If you look at New Japan, if you look at wrestling in Japan traditionally, I'm not talking about all the companies, but let's say New Japan, you might say that it's 80% sport, 20% entertainment. When you look at WWE, you might say that traditionally under Vince, it was maybe 40% sports, 60% entertainment, or something like this. Yeah. You look at AEW, maybe it's a toss-up. I don't know what it is. But the point being that because of the mentality of the Nordic people, of Finnish people especially, you've got to give them either sport or give them entertainment. So this is the struggle that we have. This is our Mein Kampf. And this is what we've struggled with for over 20 years, is trying to give these people an understanding that pro wrestling is really neither. It is an island unto itself. It is not North America, and it is not Europe. It's Iceland, if you get my drift.
Sure.
So in this way, I believe that wrestling is still a niche product in Finland. So wrestling is still, to some degree, an anomaly to many because they can't wrap their head around it. But because the times are changing and the new generation of kids coming up on TikTok and coming up on all these, like, they're only in it for the dopamine. And wrestling, pro wrestling, offers you more dopamine than I believe any other sport / form of sports entertainment out there. So that's why I believe that this newer crowd of kids now who are addicted to the TikToks and everything else, they're the ones that are finding pro wrestling, and people are more open to the idea of pro wrestling now because of the fact that their brains are more short-circuited because of the way that culture is nowadays. Now, I'm not putting anybody down. I'm just saying I'm calling a spade a spade. That's really what it is. So with that in mind, it's still an uphill battle. It's still tough. There's another company in Finland that I used to run. They're not really a company. They're a non-profit organization, and they actually have deemed themselves publicly to be community theater, not professional wrestling. They've openly gone into the Finnish media saying that what they do is theater. So I don't deem them to be competition because of that fact. What we do is professional wrestling. What they do is community theater, so let them be. And with that in mind, to each their own.
Very interesting indeed. And I'm sure the more shows you get out there, but like I say, it's very interesting that you're attracting that TikTok audience, the younger audience that are more into their social media, more into their entertainment, similar to that, and wrestling falls perfectly into that category. Let me take you back to Saturday night, because it wasn't just Heidi Katrina that was crowned as champion at SUPERSLAM, was it? And let's just cast your mind back 5 days. It was yourself versus one of the UK's finest, one of the very best heavyweights in the UK and Europe, Sam Gradwell, another former guest on the show, against yourself, the Rebel, STARBUCK, in a thrilling match to cap off what's been a tremendous feud storyline between yourself and Sam that's gone over the last 4 or 5 months since your last encounter, which ended via a referee stoppage, if I'm not mistaken. And there we go. The closing moments of Saturday's match saw a brand new champion, and that champion was the Rebel, STARBUCK. There he is getting on the mic after the match, and there he is looking very, very sharp with that championship bout. Now, you spoke earlier about your emotions as a promoter following that show, but as a competitor, especially going to war with somebody as good as Sam Gradwell, where were your emotions after that match as a competitor, especially with the thrilling entertainment that yourself and Sam put on Saturday night?
Well, I'll tell you what, the thing is that I know this business like my own hands. So I've always said that pro wrestling is both my wife and my mistress. They're one and the same. I have no other love. It is one love for pro wrestling, and that's it. So I believe that to become great at what you do, you must immerse yourself. You have to go underwater, so to speak. You have to be completely deluged with said endeavor. Sam Gradwell, I know, is one of the best in Europe because I know talent when I see it. Sam Gradwell is hands down top 10 in all of Europe, period, right now. Give the man his flowers, give him his due. He is top 10 in Europe. He's got all the bases covered. Now, when you look in the dictionary, the Encyclopedia Britannica, at the definition of a professional wrestler, I believe Sam Gradwell's picture will come up. He has got the body. He has got the wrestling skill. When he opens his mouth, his voice, it sounds like he's making a personalized threat to you when he speaks. Sam Gradwell has got all of the bases covered in our game that you need to be successful. With that said, in the past couple of years, I've been blessed to have found a new gear in my game. Like I said, now 30 years came to fruition for me on January 7th of this year. My first match was, thank you. My first match was against my coach, Lance Storm, in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, at the Victoria Park Civic Center, January 7th, 1994. And since that time, for 30 years now, I've been doing what I've been doing with this business, with this thing that we call pro wrestling. I face the best of the best. And I've been blessed to wrestle guys like Fit Finlay, wrestle guys like Genichiro Tenryu. I've been able to wrestle Keiji. So I'm speaking the best of the best. And when I wrestled Sam Gradwell now at the age of 50, I realized something. I wrestled some of the best matches of my career against this guy. I wrestled Axel Tischer this past summer. And it was hands down, it was voted the match of the year in Slam Wrestling for last year. So at the age of 50, I found another gear in my game. I don't have to do all the stuff that the young people do. I don't have to do all the stuff that the indie-rific crowd does. I don't do, heck, even a quarter of that stuff. What I do is I wrestle. It's like the NWA slogan back in the late 80s, NWA, where we wrestle, right? And there's a saying in our business, you're only as good as the man that you're in the ring with. With that said, it takes two to tango. And Sam Gradwell was one of the best opponents, I will put in these words, one of the best opponents that I've ever faced in my career. There's something about entering a match where there are no bells and whistles, there's no gaga, there's no bullshit, that you wrestle old school, you wrestle hard, you wrestle snug, tight, you can even go a bit stiff. You do business the way that men do business. And what you do in the process is that you make believers out of people. You're in the make-believe industry where we make believers out of people. That's what I was able to do in my matches with Sam Gradwell. And it takes two to tango, but by that same token, I could not have wrestled these matches with just anybody. It took somebody who is on the level of a Sam Gradwell. Like I said, I've been in this business against the best in the business. I know what I'm talking about now. Sam Gradwell, hands down, top 10 in Europe.
I totally agree. Totally agree. Not going to argue with you. I've known Sam for a couple of years now. Really top guy and a terrific professional wrestler indeed. Let's take you all the way back to 2018 now, Michael. And what was the motivation? What was the decision? What was the inspiration behind starting Slam Wrestling in Finland?
Well, I ran this other company that I mentioned, which shall go unnamed because I don't believe that I even have to mention their name. They don't deserve it because of the fact that I don't promote community theater, and I don't promote the woke agenda. And they've gone both ways. They've gone woke and they've gone community theater. So, but I had a falling out with that because the mindset of the organization and of the younger crowd there became such that they wanted to go a certain direction where I no longer felt that for a person at my stage of life that I wanted to be a part of that. It didn't offer me anything. I saw that it was headed in a direction where I could not agree with what they were about to become. And then I said to myself that I've invested all of my life, my adult life, into professional wrestling. I'm the guy that started pro wrestling in Finland in 2003. I'm the man that began teaching other people here. I'm the pioneer. I'm not going to leave this business into the hands of community theater presentators. I'm not going to do that. This is not my legacy. I'm going to leave this business better for the sake of, I got into pro wrestling, and when I leave pro wrestling one day, I'm going to leave pro wrestling, not community theater. And with that, I wanted to leave not only my legacy through continuing in pro wrestling after I split ways with them. What I did was that I said to myself that I was about 45 at the time. And I said to myself, how am I going to make my money in the future? Like, because times are tough and the economy is shaky. And either I go back to college, university, get myself another career, a diploma, some kind of trade, a new trade ticket to start making like regular money doing something which would generate cash for a living. Or then I find a way to do what I know what to do, like to do what I know best of all, which is pro wrestling, and find a way to formulate that into cash and into a living. That's what I chose. I chose the latter. I chose to go with pro wrestling, no matter how hard it's been, no matter how many years I've toiled in this country, no matter all of the ups and the downs and the fact that we've never been able to really crack that nut, as I said, as I told you about cracking that Nordic nut.
Mm.
I still chose to take the path less traveled. At the age of 45, I said, no, I'm going to choose professional wrestling because this is what I know best of all. This is what I know like my own two hands. So that's why I'm going to continue on this route. I'm going to find a way where there's a will, there's a way. I'm going to find a way that I'm going to increase the value of what I do. I'm going to make my own company, my own presentation such that value will come to value and people will gravitate towards it because I know what I present and I know what I'm giving people. And now finally in 2024, Fight TV, Triller TV.
Mm.
So it's a question of persistence. It's like Anthrax had this album, Persistence of Time, back in 1990. And it is persistence. You need to be consistent in what you do. You can't be a flake. You can't be iffy. You can't be shifty. You have to stick with it through hell or high water. Whatever it is that you have chosen to apply yourself to as an endeavor, you have to stick with it to the bitter end. The captain goes down with his ship. You've got to do that. And I chose that route, and my route was pro wrestling. That's why Slam Wrestling was born. That's why, because I said to myself that this is the legacy that I will leave behind. And because as I get older, and when my active career finishes, the day that it finishes, when I no longer will step into the ring myself as a competitor, I still want to do wrestling because it's the only thing that I love.
Yeah.
So even as an older man, even as I enter now my 50s, and as I go into my 60s, and Lord knows how long I will have on this earth, but I want to be involved with things that I have a passion for. The worst thing in the world is a man who lacks passion. You know, even woman will not, if a man makes a woman the center of his life or the center of his existence, she will leave him because it's too much of a burden. But if a man has a mission, a woman will be gravitating towards a man on a mission because then she becomes an accomplice and she becomes a helper and she comes along for the ride and the thrill. And I've seen this. This is the way it works. It's the man you have as a man, the most pathetic man out there is the one who is lacking any mission in his life. That's why for me, Slam Wrestling is my mission. It is what I've given my life to, professional wrestling. Now, Slam Wrestling is just an extension of my professional wrestling life. And as I get older, my endeavor, my passion, my aim, my goal is to take Slam Wrestling and make it as large of an operation as possible. Now, when I say that, who knows? Because the thing is, my manager is up there. He's the one that opens all my doors. And he's the one that facilitates all these things for me that have happened even to this date right now. And that's why for me, as long as I'm right with the big man upstairs, as long as I'm right with him, I know that I'll be okay because this is the gift that I've been given. All of us are given different gifts, but this is my gift.
Yeah.
And as long as I'm in the right place and as long as that I hold my head high and I have integrity, personal integrity, the way that I handle my business. And everybody who's worked for us, by the way, everybody who's ever worked for Slam Wrestling Finland can tell you, we are an exceptionally good company to work for. Why? Because there are no politics here. And there's a spirit here. There's a certain kind of spirit that separates us from the rest of the pack. Everybody who comes here says there's something really special about this place. And I know why. Is because I got a great manager.
There you go.
And with that, I have confidence that I can go forward in my life, in my personal endeavor, as a businessman, as a promoter with Slam Wrestling Finland, that I can go forth into the world that I need to go into, whether it be fight, whether it be the rest of Europe, whether it be the world. And I know as long as I'm okay with my manager, I'll be okay too. And my business will be okay.
Let me ask you, Michael, what inspired you to get into the business yourself? What inspired you to go out there, find a training school, find a trainer? You mentioned Lance Storm being a big inspiration of yours and being your trainer. He was your first ever opponent. But what was that spark? What was that seed in you that made you want to follow your passion as a fan and to take up the sport yourself?
When I was 6 years old, I was living in Timmins, Ontario, Canada, so that my birthplace. We were at a family friend's home with my parents, and they were in the kitchen with this older couple, and I was in the living room watching television. I was by myself, and professional wrestling happened to come on. This was like 1979, maybe. And all I remember is a blonde, hulking, muscular professional wrestler in tights. It wasn't Hulk Hogan, but it might have been Superstar Billy Graham, but it was a blonde, hulking, muscular wrestler in tights. And as a young boy of 6, I was spellbound. Because every boy out there looks to his father and he says, "Daddy, show me your muscles." Every boy out there, naturally, it's the natural inclination to seek out masculine traits. And one of those traits is power and muscle. So as a boy, I thought, wow, this is the shit. And as I got older, I think I was about maybe 9, 10 years old. I was living in Thunder Bay, Ontario. I believe it was the year 1985. So it would have been, I would have been 12 years old then, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so it's 73, I was born, 85, there you go, that's 12. So I was 12 years old. And lo and behold, Saturday night's main event comes on TV, NBC. And I had the snowy television with the rabbit ears, right? So I could barely make out the signal, the UHF. And all I remember is the signal kept on going out, but it was Nikolai Volkov against Hulk Hogan. And I felt the adrenaline, I felt the rush, and I felt my body just like you're on static fire. This is so exciting. Somehow I knew it was just for me. This was my thing. And when I moved to Calgary, Alberta, Canada, I've lived in Calgary prior to that with my parents. My father's a minister, he's a preacher, but so my father had been a minister in Calgary. But I moved back in 1992. I went to art college, the Alberta College of Art. And I dropped out after the first semester because I hated it. It was just I absolutely despised art college. I did get my art diploma later on, but in commercial art, but nonetheless, it was not for me. Plus, the interest rate was 18%. I would have been paying out my ass until I was 60. So I dropped out after 4 months, and I had to find a job. I finally found a job driving bottled water in Calgary. It was called Alberta Bottled Water. And I brought these 20-liter water bottles to this taxi company one day in the industrial sector of Calgary. And as I walked in, I saw these pictures of old Stampede wrestlers, black and white framed photos on the wall. And I asked the proprietor, why do you have pictures of pro wrestlers on your walls? He said, "Oh, I used to be a manager." "Oh, like a professional wrestling manager?" I said, "Yeah, I used to be a manager for Stu Hart Stampede Wrestling." "What was your name?" "Abu Wizal, Karachi Vice." And I said, "Oh, I know who you are." I said, "Hey, is there any wrestling in Calgary right now?" He said, "No, there's not. But this autumn, a new promotion is starting up, and I can give you the information of the promoter if you'd like." I said, "Yes, please." The promoter was Steve DeSalvo, who wrestled with Steve Strong, also in Canada, and Carlos Colon in Puerto Rico, and Beef Wellington, who was Chris Benoit's old tag team partner. These two guys were the promoters. They put me in contact with them. The rest is history. So I showed up at Steve DeSalvo's realty office, I said, hey, my name is Mike. I'm an artist. That's all I had to bring to the table. I draw. I'm an illustrator. I figured maybe I could draw pictures of the wrestlers for their, you know, their weekly wrestling programs or something. But that's not what he heard. That's not what he heard in me. That's not what he saw in me. What he heard was my voice. They said, no, I'm going to make you a commentator. And as I got involved in pro wrestling through my voice, I got to know the boys. And Chris Jericho was starting his career then. Lenny St. Clair, who's now Luther in AEW, was wrestling at the time. Johnny Smith was coming in and out of All Japan. Chip the Firebreaker was there, who used to wrestle in WCW.
Yeah.
My other coach, Jason the Terrible, Carl Moffitt. So I had two coaches. He was wrestling there, and he became the booker. And during that time, I got to be friends with Lance Storm. And Lance and I became training partners at the gym. We would go 3 times a week to train at the gym together. And during that time, we became fast friends. And Lance one day said to me, says, you know, I see the passion, I see the fire that you have for pro wrestling. And if you want, I'll train you. Are you kidding me? If I want? Hell yeah, I want. Because it would have cost me $5,000 at the time to get trained. And I didn't have that money. I was living hand to mouth. Every 2 weeks, I'd get a paycheck for Alberta bottled water, for driving bottled water around the city, for washing the canisters and all that in the back. You know, it was a menial labor. But every 2 weeks, I get paid, and the last $5 that I would have would go into my gas tank to make it to work, that I could get paid on the Friday, that I could make it for another 2 weeks and put the last $5 in my bank account, into my gas tank, just to get to work. I didn't have $5,000 to join the Hart Brothers Wrestling School. So when Lance said, if you want to be trained, if you want to get trained, I'll train you. Oh, hell yeah, I do. And he never asked for a penny of my money. Lance Storm trained me out of friendship. On top of that, Carl Moffitt, Jason the Terrible, he also had, you could say that, like, he had a liking to me. He saw a young guy, a young kid at the age of 19, who just had this burning passion for pro wrestling. And there was a soft spot in his heart where he was the booker, and he was like, I want to help this kid out. So he said that every Wednesday, I believe it was, at the Victoria Park Civic Center, Carl would hold training sessions for the younger talent, for the greener guys, to help them up their game. And he said, you can join the training sessions if you like. And I did. And I got the shit beat out of me. I remember one time, Carl, he was old school. He would hit you with everything, from the headbutts on down. Everything connected. You could hear the bone crunch when he hit you with the headbutt. And I remember one time he had me in the corner, and he's hit me with the shoulder blocks in the midsection in the corner. I tried to put my hand in the way because it hurt so much. And he stood up. He's a big man. He's like 6'4", 6'5". And he stood up and he said, if you ever fucking do that again, I'll fucking tear your head off. And at that point I said, okay, sir, you hit me with anything. I don't care. He drove the fear out of me in that one moment. And for the rest of my career, I've been one of these guys who's like to wrestle tight. I had some people that don't like it. Some people is like, you're too stiff, this, that, the other. But for me, the worst thing you can say to me is just another one of these phony wrestlers.
Yeah.
That's not who I am. Johnny Valentine said that I can't make you believe pro wrestling is real, but I damn sure can make you that I am. I make you believe that I'm real. Ole Anderson said the same thing. He said, you can watch every other match on this card tonight. You watch my match, you see any bullshit, I'll give you your money back. That's the piety. That is the passion with which I immersed myself in this business, that I prided myself on being the wrestler that would make you believe.
Let me ask you, Michael, did you work solidly from 1994 through to when you moved over to Europe in the early 2000s? I think it's 2003. Well, when I was doing my research, there was a period where I couldn't find too much information on STARBUCK.
Yeah.
But is there a reason behind that, or were you wrestling solidly for that 9 or 10 year period? Oh, I think we've temporarily lost Starbuck there. I'm sure he'll rejoin us. Here we go.
The worst time of my career. Worst time of my career.
Carry on.
Yeah. But yeah, I wrestled for Scott Conway also in England. There was a time where I lost the taste for it. I lost the taste for the business after working for Stevens. It was a horrible time, just absolutely the drizzling shits. And what happened was that I lost the taste for pro wrestling for a few years. It was just like it just this foul, bitter taste in your mouth, you know. But there, you know, I used different names throughout my career. When I started my career in '94, I was Mike Marshall. So my wrestling, like my ring announcer surname was Marshall. So that was my first wrestling name. As soon as I moved out of Calgary, I started using Mike Wildside, which Motley Crue is my favorite band of all time, and Wildside was one of their hit songs. So it was Mike Wildside. I remember one time I was wrestling in Windsor, Ontario for Scott D'Amour's Border City Wrestling, and first time I met Al Snow, and Al Snow walks into the dressing room, and I introduced myself. Hey there, Mr. Snow. My name is Mike Wildside. He said, first thing he says to me, "What's wild about you?" Ha! Ha! You know, here's a lesson for a young kid. Your projection, what you're projecting, what you're putting out there, what's wild about it? I thought about it for a second, and I said, no, I do a moonsault. That's the best explanation that I can come up with. I could do a moonsault.
But it taught you a lesson, didn't it? It taught you a lesson.
He taught me a lesson. Yeah. And I remember to this day. And the funny thing is that, yeah, I mean, so I was Mike Wildside for a while, and then when I wrestled in England, I was the Natural. And then after that, Starbuck. And you know, people ask me all the time, why did you name yourself after a coffee chain? I said, I didn't. If you don't know what Starbuck means, it's a combination of two words, because if you look at the way that I spell it, it's capital S and capital B, but it's all one word, Star and Buck. So what does that mean? Star is self-explanatory. Buck is Texas slang or Southern slang for stud. That guy's a stud. He's a buck, right? That's what it is. That's what it means.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with coffee.
And I mentioned the early 2000s. I think you came over and resided in Europe and Finland permanently from about 2003 onwards. But I was staggered doing my research, the number of countries that you performed in, that you visited in. Certainly between 2003 and 2010, I've got a list here. Italy, Germany, Spain, Estonia, Denmark, Poland, Norway, Finland. You even took a bit of a tour and a few matches over in Egypt. But Europe truly was your oyster back in the 2000s, weren't they, Michael?
Yeah. It's actually, the thing is that, like, my career goal was always Japan. For me, I always thought that if I could make it just once to Japan, it would be like the crowning moment for me. Little did I know that when I got to Japan, I became an overnight sensation. I was made into a star overnight, to the point where Tokyo Sports was writing about me. Samurai TV was doing stuff on me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I became the top gaijin for Tajiri's companies for a 4-year period between 2010 and 2014.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, I mean, that was my best time in my life. That was the best time of my career, especially 2010, 2011, even into 2012. That was the absolute highlight of my personal pro wrestling career. I was going to Japan almost monthly. So, but yeah, before that, I made my name and I etched my reputation in Europe. And by and large, one of the proponents and one of the people that went to bat for me was Eric Isaacson from Norway, the Norwegian pro wrestling pioneer. He had started 1 year earlier before us to promote wrestling in Norway. And he was trained by Doc Dean out of England.
Yeah.
In 96. And so he started his career in 96. And Eric he utilized me in Norway more than I believe any other singular foreign wrestler, non-Norwegian wrestler up to that point, and even past that point. I believe that I've been there more times than anybody, specifically, like any other individual, to wrestle for them. So because of the fact that Eric gave me, it's once again, it really is networking, right? So, and Eric was working for a guy out of Italy called Sergio. And Sergio, he wrestles as El Dinamico, and he has a company called IWS, International, Italian Wrestling Superstar. And I became the champion for IWS. There's just something where I don't know exactly why. I believe that Bernard Van Dam, who I took the European Championship off of, the Eurostars European Championship back in 2006. When I wrote my book, it's called Battleground Valhalla. You can pick it up off crowbarpress.com. I wrote it myself. There's no ghostwriter. It was put out in 2017. But I had several of the people that I wrestled in my career write inserts for the book. And Steve Carino wrote one, and Bernard Van Dam wrote one, Michael Kovac wrote one, and Akira Nogami wrote one, Tajiri wrote one, etc., etc., etc. Chris Jericho wrote the back cover. And in that book, Bernard Van Dam says one really key thing. He says that Mike never was the biggest guy out there. He wasn't the most powerful. He wasn't the most technical. He wasn't the best wrestler, but he had a bit of everything. This is the thing. He had a bit of everything. And when I wrestled in not only Italy, that was really the time when I started to really make a name for myself, because when I became their champion there. But outside of that, I think that a few years later, when I was wrestling for Tajiri, he's the one that put it into words. And I think that it really made me think, because he said, Christ-like. That I want you to, when you go to the ring, I want you to just, like stoic. You hold your hands out, like Randy Orton does, kind of thing, right? But
yeah,
hold your hands out, and you're almost like you're stoic. And I had this fringe leather jacket that I wore for years and years and years. It was a brown leather jacket with the fringe on the sides here, dripping off the forearms and on the back and everything. And he said, you bring that jacket to Japan. Yeah, the one in the picture there, that's my newer jacket of the same type. It's a black one, but it was a brown jacket at the time. He said, you bring that jacket to Japan, you wear it everywhere. You wear it to the TV stations. You wear it to the press conferences. You wear it everywhere. That's what I want you to wear. Because he believed that it was like Christ-like, the image that he was projecting. Maybe it's my beard, maybe it's my look. I don't know what it is, maybe it's my personal faith, because what's in you is going to come out of you. And I think that there is something where if you have a Christ-like demeanor in some way, shape, or form, now that's up for debate. Anybody can say this guy's a prick, I don't like him at all. And if that's the case, so be it. I don't care. But I think that enough people out there felt the same. They felt the same. And I'm very taken by that. I'm very flattered that in some way, shape, or form, there's an element of my personality and my character that gravitated towards, or that enough people felt a gravitational pull towards, that it helped me become a star throughout Europe and then ultimately in Japan. And I believe that because whatever is in you is going to come out of you. Whatever's on the inside is going to be reflected on the outside. And that's where I believe that that's one thing that really helped me in this. The other thing was that I learned to talk. I became a really good talker. And I learned and I studied guys like Jake Roberts, Michael Hayes, Ric Flair, Arn Anderson. I studied the masters and I figured how they did their piece of business. Then I looked at other people that are great orators of our time. As much as I don't care for his politics, but let's say Barack Obama. When you listen to the guy talk, the guy can talk.
Oh yeah.
You might not like Donald Trump, but hey, Donald Trump, he can talk. And all of the great orators of our time, whether it's you know, the great historical figures like Martin Luther King or whoever whatever have you, all of them could talk. Muhammad Ali could talk. So because of the fact that I had clean English, and because of the fact that I could talk well, and I could talk you into a stupor, I could talk you into under a spell, I could talk you into the house, I could talk you into buying what I had to sell, I was able to become a star. Because if you think of Charlie Chaplin made silent movies, but he was so visual that he got away with it. His body language was so visual that he didn't need the voice. That was his magic. But most people, if you take a look at let's draw a cross comparison. Joe Satriani, fantastic guitarist.
Yeah.
But it's musical, it's instrumental. The voice is missing. And when you're missing the voice, you're missing the spirit, which makes alive. Now, that's why WWE, that's why they talk so much. That's why Roman Reigns, all he's got to do is talk. That's why Ric Flair would come out on WTBS and cut those raging promos back in the day. He'd barely ever wrestle on TBS. He'd just talk. That's where people identify with who you are, your character. And that's why I believe that I've been able to sell my character, to sell the Starbuck persona through so many different nationalities, to so many different nations and promotions, and be successful at what I do versus many of my peers, is because I can talk.
Two other countries. Sorry, Mike, I was going to ask you, two other countries that really fascinated me that you've been to more recent times, I think 2017, Pakistan and Russia. Now, once again, two countries that I wouldn't necessarily associate them with professional wrestling, but apparently they do have a scene, and you've performed out there. Was it different or weird in any way to wrestle in those countries?
Well, Pakistan was pretty interesting in the way that we had an armed guard 24/7. So when we'd stay at the hotel, if you went outside, you'd be accompanied by an armed guard. There was a convoy behind the tour bus, 5 cars long, with machine guns. Right? Wow. They had the open pickup trucks with the machine guns. So the thing is that they're not screwing around. There's something there where you just don't want to step out onto the open street. You know what I mean? Like, people, they're going to hoard you. They're just gonna flock, and they will not even leave you alone. I remember wrestling at some of the places in Pakistan. I believe it was at Islamabad, and the bathrooms from the dressing room were in a different building, and it was an outdoor stadium. It was more like an amphitheater kind of stadium, but they'd have to have the armed guards, 2 guards, take you to the bathroom, because the people would flock as soon as they saw you. They'd be running to you. Hey, picture, autograph, picture. And it's like you couldn't even make it out. You couldn't make it out because they wouldn't leave you alone. So in that way, yeah, it's pretty interesting. It was very interesting. I thought that there was actually blood all over the streets, but it was when you're driving down the main roads in, let's say, Karachi. It looks like people's brains have been splattered onto the dividers, the dividing the highways. It was like it looked like there's blood everywhere. And I said, are these vehicular homicides, or what is this? I said, no, it's chewing tobacco. They spit the tobacco out, wow, and it stains the concrete. It looks like blood. So, and Russia I've been to several times. Russia's another place where, I was able to, I think it's because of the fact that Russia is a very hard nation, and they've gone through a lot. Those people have gone through a lot. And they have an inclination to like their wrestling violent. Now, I don't do garbage wrestling, but I do a very credible style. I throw one of the best punches in the wrestling business. I'll say that right now. I'll put my punch against anybody else's punch, hands down. That's the one thing that most people in this business can't do today. They can't punch. That's probably like what Fit Finlay said. I asked him back in 2011 when I wrestled Fit. I said, Dave, why do you think that guys can't throw a punch nowadays? And he said, oh, because they've never been in a real fight.
Good point.
There you go. There you go. You treat it like it's hokey because it's not real to you. But if it's real to you, it'll be real to them. So that's where, for me, I'll put my punch up against anybody, any day of the week, any fucking day of the week. I'll put my kick up against anybody, any day of the week. My stomp up against.
Oh, I think we've temporarily lost the rebel there. Please stay with us. And it's been a utterly fantastic conversation. He's back. He's back. There we go. Yeah. I think someone's either trying to call you or send you a message, but
no,
we've got you back. No. Please carry on with your fantastic stories.
Yeah. So because people in Russia have an affinity towards things that are violent, probably because there is a certain underlying aggression in those people because of the way that their nation has been handled. I believe that they liked my wrestling. The funny thing is that I had two moves throughout my career that I've been using. One of them is the Paul Orndorff jumping spike pile driver. That's my finish. And the other one is a super kick like Shawn Michaels. And I ripped the super kick. I ripped off Shawn Michaels. I could tell and I ripped the pile driver off of Paul Orndorff. And Big Show said back in the day, everything that I do, I ripped off somebody. It's the truth. Nobody's an original. Maybe Dean Allmark is an original. Maybe Dean Allmark. But as far as what he comes up with. But otherwise, we all copy. And I copied from Shawn Michaels and I copied from Paul Orndorff. And some stuff off of Ted DiBiase and some stuff off of Tully Blanchard and some stuff off of Ric Flair. But that's what I did. I just copied. And then I just made it my own. Some stuff off of Bret Hart, blah, blah, blah. And then when in Russia, for example, when I would do the super kick, the booker would say, you have to do your super kick. I said, but everybody here does super kicks. Because I watched them, right? Everybody's doing super kicks. He said, yeah, but your super kick is different. Why is that? Why is that? It's like Jake the Snake Roberts DDT. Everybody nowadays does a DDT. They do it.
Hopefully we'll get Starbuck back in a moment. Do apologize, ladies and gentlemen. And okay,
yeah, there it is.
He's a few thousand miles away from the UK, so you can understand the technical difficulties. But please continue. I think you were talking about Jake Roberts' DDT and how everybody is bastardizing the DDT.
Yeah. So like when Jake Roberts hits the DDT, it's the finish. Nobody gets up after the DDT after Jake hits it. Now, anybody else in the business can do a DDT and it'll be just a mid-match move and you'll be running spots 20 seconds later. That's the thing is when I went to Russia, one of my moves was a super kick. Everybody else did super kicks too. And I said, I don't want to do the super kick because everybody else is doing it. No, you have to do it. Why? Because your super kick is different. This is the point.
Yeah.
This is the point. Dr. Tom Pritchard said on the Chris Benoit Hard Knocks DVD in 2004, there's a match there from the Brian Pillman tribute show where it's William Regal and Chris Benoit. And Dr. Tom does the commentary on that. And he says a really good point. It's shoot commentary. And he says, look at this match. I show all of my students this match. These two guys are not in there playing wrestler. They're not in there acting wrestler. They're not in there doing anything other than wrestling. These guys are actually wrestling. And that's where it's kind of like, if it's real to you, it'll be real to them. That's what Dr. Tom said on the DVD.
Yeah.
And these two guys are doing business the right way because they're giving you a match that you can believe in. Now, my biggest critic is my own father. My dad is 85 years old now, and he's not a wrestling fan, but of course he's a fan of his own son. And every once in a while, when I go see my dad, I put some wrestling on TV, and I have a DVD player at his place, and I'll put some wrestling on. My dad is the worst critic in the world because he can see through all the bullshit. And when I showed him Chris Benoit's matches, my dad is glued to his seat. He's twitching in his seat because he's so invested. But then I put some other matches on, like just general WWE pay-per-view matches from the 2000, 2010 era. And my dad is like, oh, this is just garbage.
Yeah.
So
he can see through it. He can see through it.
He can see through it. That's my whole point. And that's where my dad is even watched some of my matches, and he says to me, and he tells people the story all the time. He says, when Michael won that one big Japanese legend he defeated, I remember that when he kicked him, Michael was in the corner, and the guy was running at Michael with full speed, and Michael got his boot up in the last second, and he kicked the guy in the head to such a degree that the other guy was woozy, and then Michael picked him upside down, and he dropped him on his head, and my dad bought it all. And the thing is that I know my dad is the worst bullshit critic in the world. But my dad believed in me. So once again, it's the same as in Russia. Same as my dad. Same as all the countries I've been to. Why have I been a success? Because I treated wrestling with seriousness. It's not been gaga, bullshit, or bells and whistles. For me, it's been that I prided myself on making people believe.
As we start to wind down this wonderful interview with Starbuck, this episode 347 of Wrestling with Jonathan, let me ask you a couple of final questions then, Michael. And I'd say a 30-plus year career in the wrestling business. You started in 1994, but training a couple of years before that. So a 32-year career, you could say. What's been some of your proudest moments in that 30-plus year career, whether it be as a performer, as a promoter? Any really, really top proud moments that stand out to you?
Japan has to be my greatest time in my career.
Yeah.
Because I was a king in Japan. I had people coming up to me on the street giving me samurai swords back home. I mean, I even had my home broken into and somebody stole my first samurai sword right off my wall. But my greatest moments, I remember some of my matches with Steve Corino. And there are people that you just have magic with. You know, there are people that you have chemistry. As a man, you can look back on your life and the woman that you've been with, and you say with certain ladies, you just had that chemistry. You can't put your finger on it, but it was more than. You don't have it with everybody. And with Akira Nagami, the first time I wrestled Akira Nagami, former IWGP Junior Champion in Japan, we were the main event at Shinjuku Face in Tokyo. And I remember it was like an 18-minute match, if I remember correctly. And, you know, it was the most magical feeling when you had those people in the palm of your hand like silly putty. And then the match, I dropped Akira on his head with a pile driver. I pin him 1, 2, 3. And after the match, he's waiting for me behind the curtain as I walk back. And as soon as I walk through, he bows down to me and he says that you are still God. And because Tajiri had profiled me as the God of the Nordics, the God of Northern European wrestling. And he bows down to me, a man who is my senior. He's been in the business longer than me, done more than me. And he bows down and he says, you are still God. It's surreal. It is freaking surreal. Wrestling, like I said, this past year, in the past 1 year period that I wrestled some of the best matches in my career against men like Axel Tischer, who wrestled in WWE for a while as part of Sanity and whatnot. And an amazing match, just an absolutely stellar. You could just feel there was almost like a serendipity, like a blessing, like God just, he lays his spirit upon your match almost. That's honestly how it felt. Like there's a blessing, there's a serendipity that's been now laid upon you in this moment. And you wrestle one of the greatest matches of your career, and those people, there's about 500 people there, and they're going bananas. And then you're in the position where I just wrestled Sam Gradwell, and the matches, the couple of matches that we had, which are epic. I dare anybody, I don't care who you are in this business, I dare anybody to go on Triller TV and Triller TV Plus and watch the 2 matches that I had with Sam Gradwell now. And they will stand up to any match in the wrestling industry. To any match in the wrestling industry. I don't care what they are. If you look at for what the body of work is that we did in those matches, they will stand up to any main event out there. Period. And I'll put my name on it.
Absolutely.
And
please continue.
Yeah. And if I look back on my career, my feud with Yoshihiro Tajiri, the feud that made my career made my name into a worldwide name, not just a European name. It put me on the world map to the point where Dave Meltzer fucked up my name on Wrestling Observer, said Jonathan Starbuck against Tajiri at Smash 10 in Tokyo back on was it November 22nd of 2010. Who the hell is Jonathan Starbuck? Check your fucking sources. Like, do your homework. But my point is that I was on the entire wrestling map because of my feud with Yoshihiro Tajiri, because Tajiri believed in me, because he gave the ball to me and he said, run with the ball. Now, when somebody gives you that opportunity, when you are not just a piece of talent, but when you become a key player, when you become a valued asset to the company that you work for, when you become a main man, and you are somebody that this company banks on for making money, to put you in the public eye, to put you on Samurai TV, to put you in front of all of the media to say, you go run with the ball, represent us. And they believe in you that much that they send you out there for that job. There's no greater honor to be had. No amount of money is going to fix that. Let me tell you one more thing. It's going to give you some inclination as to integrity. New Japan propositioned me in the year 2012. I went out in Tokyo. I had lunch with one of the members of the New Japan office, said, now's your time. You got to switch over. You've got to jump to New Japan now. I said, I can't do that. I said, sorry, Mr. Tajiri has lost his main money man. At that time, he lost one of the main promoter that pumped the money into his operation. He lost that source. And he was in a tough bind where if at that time, if I would have made just a business decision, if I would have just said that, okay, yeah, now's the time. New Japan, second biggest company in the world at the time, right? So, yeah, let's go. Let's go. If I would have said that, I would have turned my back on a man who would have needed me the most at that moment, who opened the doors for me to become a star in his country, which was my goal in the business, which was Japan. So I said to New Japan, I said, I'm sorry, but I can't do that. And I walked away. I walked away from a New Japan offer because of being loyal to Tajiri, because he offered me the opportunity to become a star in his country. That's how much I respect what he did for my career. That's how much I respect the fact that he put me in front of all the medias as the forerunner, as the standard for his companies. Go out there, represent us, because he had that faith in me. He knew that I could deliver. So when I look back on my career, these are the moments that stand out the most. These are the moments that make me look back. And as an old man one day, if I live that long, I'm going to look back and I'm going to say, when people ask me, what have you ever done in your life? What have you ever achieved? Grandpa, what have you ever done? I'll tell them, this is what I've done.
Yeah.
And that's why I say I've lived the life of 10 men. But the number one thing is that, like, I'm a terrible politician. I hate wrestling politics. I hate politics in general. I have no time for politics, the woke crowd, or any of the garbage that goes on. All I care about is if you're a decent human being, because I expect the same from myself. if you're a good person, a good man, a good woman, if you're a man of your word, a woman of your word, and if you put out an honest, solid effort, if you bring something of value to the table, if you can generate money for my company, or if, and now I'm in the same position where Tajiri was, I need to put somebody else out there to be the standard. If you can deliver on that level, I have time for you. I have time for you. But if it's just somebody who wants to be transient, just to come in, come out, is like just to get another notch on their belt, another country on the list. Oh, looking to expand opportunities in my career this year. Just asking if there'd be any places on your Slam Wrestling roster. What the hell are these fucking emails? I'm not doing anybody a fucking service, public service. This is a company. This is a business. What are you offering me? How are you going to bring value to my business that I can generate more business, sell tickets, have people come to my show and pump money into my operation so that I can make a living? How are you going to do that? That's the question that every wrestler out there needs to ask. Anybody who's going to hear this interview and is going to think, oh, I'm going to try to get myself a booking with Slam Wrestling now after I hear this. Keep this in mind. What value do you inherently bring to the table? How are you going to sell tickets for me? If I put you on a poster, is your name going to mean anything? Just because you're somebody somewhere doesn't mean that you're somebody somewhere else. So this is really the core of what we do. We treat wrestling seriously. For us, pro wrestling is a company. It's not fun that we have with our friends. It's not a social club. It is a business. And with that, I have to make money at the end of the day to have a future for myself, for my wife, for my family, and for the people that work for me, for my shareholders.
Absolutely.
And with that in mind, I thank you, John, for this interview. I thank you for the time. If there's anything else you'd like me to answer, I can certainly answer whatever questions you still have.
I think we are just about ready to wrap up, but I just wanted to thank you for, like I say, your 30-plus year career and being true legends of the wrestling business, and for all of your hard work, dedication, and loyalty to Slam Wrestling Finland. And let's say after the historic show that you put on this past Saturday, I urge anybody to go out and check out that show on replay on TRILLER TV Plus or Fight TV. Go and check it out, because it was a tremendous show. And kind of a bit of a final question is, obviously 2022, 2023 were very busy years, kind of two of your biggest years for Slam Wrestling. 2024, I'm guessing you've got a calendar full of shows waiting to present to your loyal audience and wrestling fans all over Europe and all over Finland. But you've already started advertising shows for 2025. So you're looking well into the future. 2024, I'm sure, is going to be another successful year and beyond.
Well, the thing is that you have to have tunnel vision in business and in life, because, you've heard about the 5-year plan, right?
Sure.
Some people making 5-year plans for their lives and 10-year plans and whatever else. And I think that you have to look ahead, and you have to try to formulate business as far ahead as possible. You have to try to, the thing is that before the Ukraine war started, I was in negotiations with St. Petersburg, Russia. I was in serious negotiations. And Slam was intended originally to be a Baltic-wide operation. Now, that, of course, requires familiarity in different markets, and the way to go about it. Of course, you can't just go in there with just a wrestling show, and initially you're going to probably have to be a part of a package with something else, maybe a car show or maybe a motorcycle event or something. But that was the original plan. And as I look forward to the coming years, I don't know how the economy is going to turn out. Right now, the economy is the drizzling shits. The price of living is so high right now. Just the electricity bill is such that it just wipes you out. It just wipes you out. And unless the economy is able to make some kind of turnaround, it's going to be a real challenge to make headway to the degree that I would have hoped for to make this a Baltic-wide operation. That's not saying it's not impossible. And once again, per se, let's just say this. Once WWE opens up NXT Europe, I do believe that there is a possibility for, if they're going to do anything in the Nordics, if I'm not the first guy that they call, then obviously they don't know what the fuck they're doing. But I do know that they're, we're on the radar already, so it's all good. But my point being that as I look forward, maybe as NXT Europe opens, maybe there'll be something there for us as a farm league or as a place that can be considered, I would hope. As the economy finally has some clarity, hopefully in the next year or two, maybe we can make a revamped effort at expanding outside of Finland. All we've had so far is Estonia, but I did make an offer to Riga, Latvia, for this summer. I'm not sure if it'll go through, but I did make the offer. And et cetera, et cetera. So this is the challenge that we have, but it's also an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because we offer something which is outside of the current wrestling bubble. As I said at the beginning of this interview, what we offer is old school. It's a throwback. It's something from wrestling the way as you remember it. And I think there's a really large demographic, once again, as I just reiterate, that fondly remember wrestling the way it used to be. They remember the NWA. They remember the classic Ricky Steamboat Macho Man's matches. They remember things like even Kurt Angle versus Chris Benoit from 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
And they have a fondness for that type of presentation, that type of wrestling. And I believe that nobody out there, and I don't like to talk industry lingo in front of people, even on these types of interviews. I don't like to use inside lingo, but let me just say this. I don't believe that anybody out there wants to pay money to see a fake fight. I don't believe that if a promotion offers a lighthearted presentation of gaga and bullshit, I don't understand where the appeal lies there. If people are just coming out just to laugh and just to maybe for the shits and the giggles, I don't understand where the money lies there, to be honest with you. But I do believe that personal issues, as Jim Ross says, personal issues sell tickets. And when you touch on a very distinct, clear heart string, you're able to tap into raw human emotion that people can identify with. And the number one thing that I do believe that applies to pro wrestling as well as anything else in life is that, just as we wrap up, Jake the Snake Roberts said a few years ago in this interview, he said that the guys today will never get over and never become as popular as the guys in my day. And the reason is because the guys today are only fishing for pops. They're only fishing for dopamine hits for your brain is so, it's so, how could you say, selfish, that as soon as you hit that dopamine button, the first question your brain's going to ask you is what's next. It's like a rock that you throw up in the sky and the rock just comes down. That's dopamine. That's why the guys today will never get over like the guys in my day, said Jake Roberts, said, because in my time, we touch people's emotions. That's why they're going to remember us forever. They're going to remember Macho Man. They're going to remember Jake the Snake. They're going to remember Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan. They're going to remember these guys because they touched your emotions.
Yeah. It
wasn't about the moves. The moves don't make you a star. If they don't care about you, they won't care about what you do. That's why.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Couldn't have said it better myself.
That's right. And that's why we produce wrestling with Slam Wrestling Finland the way that you remembered it.
Absolutely. But on that note, STARBUCK, the CEO of Slam Wrestling Finland, I want to thank you so much for being a wonderful guest. So many wonderful stories, and a legend of the business. And who knows, maybe in a year or two, we can do a part 2 of this interview. But STARBUCK, I want to thank you so much. It's quite late over there in Helsinki, but I want to wish you a good evening, a good night. And thank you to everybody that's watched. But STARBUCK, thank you again for your time.
Okay, thank you so much, John. God bless you all.
Take care. Thank you, everybody.